Hi guys, it's Michelle from Deception Bites, and I'm back again for part 7. I meant to do a couple videos yesterday, but I have been struggling with a migraine for 2 days. Very unusual for me. So I'm going to try and do my best here because I do want to get at least one done today, and otherwise we may never get through them. But anyway, we're continuing with the in-depth analysis of Q-anon's posts. And I think we left off around here. And this one has taken a bit of time to research. The next few, there's just a lot of information there, and it's actually boggling to the mind. So I'll get into it. Some of it I don't know, and maybe, you guys that have different information can fill me in, because I'm really appreciating the fact that people are either emailing me or putting comments below and kind of filling in some of the gaps or the things that I miss. It takes all of us, and I'm not pretending to be some expert. I know that we've all looked at different areas of this and different parts of it, and so I am depending on you guys to help fill in some knowledge there. And I want to thank Jeffrey. Thank you for the coffee, Jeffrey. I really did appreciate it. And it was delicious. Anyway, we will get going here. And it seemed to me, yes, I wanted to bring up something. Just 1 second here. I wanted to bring up something. And I just noticed this when I was checking the news and so forth, that President Trump today had designated North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. And that's quite, well, it's actually a little bit surprising. I don't think I was expecting that, but especially after he said that that North Korea was being run by the CIA. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. And if any of you have any ideas or want to add something, please do. But there was something else down here that I thought was very interesting. Is this it? Oh, no, that's the same thing. 1 second. A border patrol agent died. That's not good news. Come on, where is it? Here it is. This really just kind of struck me. It says, last Iraqi town held by ISIS recaptured, officials say. I just think that it's just really interesting, because how long have we been dealing with this ISIS stuff? It's been a long time. I don't even know how long it goes back for, but it's a while. And we could never make any inroads. And now, all of a sudden, I mean, Trump's been in for, a year? And all of a sudden, ISIS is all but wiped out. So there's definitely something to that. And for that, I'm very grateful, because I can't imagine that the terror that these people must be feeling over there. I can't even imagine it. Anyway, let's continue with this. November 4th at 7:02 p.m. Q says, martial law declared in Saudi Arabia. And yes, indeed, it was declared on November 4th. Why is this relevant? Well, I think he's going to tell us why it's relevant, but still, I don't have the full, complete picture of why it's so relevant to us, except I know that there are so many ties financially, with all sorts of things. But how much money was donated to the Clinton Foundation by Saudi Arabia? Well, as it turns out, between 10 million and 25 million. That's no small amount of cash. The next thing he asks is, how much money was donated to the John McCain Institute by Saudi Arabia? Well, Bloomberg reported in 2016 on a $1 million Saudi Arabian donation to the Institute. The McCain Institute to date has refused to publicly explain the Saudi Arabian $1 million contribution. Probably not surprised at that. But here's something else interesting. The Institute has accepted contributions of as much as 100,000 from billionaire liberal activist funder George Soros, and from Teneo, a for-profit company co-founded by Doug Brand, former President Bill Clinton's, quote, bagman. Teneo, if that's the correct pronunciation of his name, I'm not sure, has long helped enrich Clinton through lucrative speaking and business deals. And I know there was something about Clinton going to Russia and getting, it was just an obscene amount to speak. It was like 500,000 or something. It was something ridiculous for a speaking engagement. How much money was donated to the Pelosi Foundation? And their foundation is called the Paul and Nancy Pelosi Charitable Foundation. And I could not find any information on this. If you guys can look and see if you can find out any information, you can find out information about the foundation, but I can't find out who donated to them. Like, I was looking specifically for Saudi Arabia and George Soros, but I could find neither. So, okay. How much money was donated to CS? CS. It seems to me that I'm not sure what that stands for, to tell you the truth. CS. I think I had gone and somebody had said it was civil service, or civil service by Saudi Arabia, but that doesn't really make sense to me. So if somebody has any more insight into this than I do, please leave a comment below, because I'm just not sure what that is. What other bad actors have been paid by Saudi Arabia? And these are his words, bribed, not just the Democrats. And I found the Bush Foundation. And the George Bush Foundation raised $361.8 million between 2010 and 2013, with no attempt at accountability or transparency. While the conservative media obsesses over creating false scandals to smear Hillary with, okay, this is written with a little bit of bias. I really don't think that they're creating things to smear Hillary with, but there is absolutely no discussion about the fact that the Dallas Morning News has investigated the Bush Foundation and found donations not only from politically connected millionaires like Sheldon Adelson, but also foreign governments like the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait. $361.8 million. Wow. Why did the Bush family recently come out against POTUS? Well, it's interesting. I read all those yesterday. I read all those things that they had to say. This is from Washington, USA Today. In case you've forgotten, the Bushes are not fans of the Donald. Former President George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush are going public with harsh criticisms of President Trump in a new book, according to published reports. The elder Bush, 93, considers Trump a, quote, blowhard, while his son thinks Trump is fanning public anger and came to the presidency with no understanding of the job. The accounts are included in The Last Republicans, which will be published by HarperCollins on November 14th, according to reports in the New York Times and CNN. The book looks at the relationship between father and son and was written with their cooperation. The elder Bush, the nation's 41st president, confirms to the book's author, historian Mark Updegrove, that he voted for Democrat Hillary Clinton in last year's election and complains that Trump is motivated by a certain ego instead of public service. So they were coming out against POTUS, and I think the elder Bush said that he had voted for Hillary, and the younger Bush had not voted at all. So, and I think maybe that was it for that. Okay, yeah, so they have been in the news recently. Now, why did the Bush family recently come out against POTUS? I'm not really sure what their motivation was. I'm really not sure. Who is good? Well, if we go by the biblical definition, the Bible says there is no one good, no, not one. And I would tend to agree with that. I think that there are degrees of badness, I guess. And certainly I don't know if we can point to any one side and say, well, this side is completely evil or this side is completely evil. I think there are bad actors, as he says, on both sides. And I think it seems like the preponderance is in the Democratic Party, but I don't believe that they have, any corner on the market of evil. So I don't know what answer he's looking for, Q, and I say he, but I don't know for a fact that this is a he. I don't know what he or she is looking at or looking for when you say who is good. What are the laws in Saudi Arabia versus U.S. regarding charged criminals? Well, just go down here a little bit. I'd like you guys to be able to follow along too, since you don't have a webcam and you're not seeing me, so I'd like you to have something to look at. Saudi Arabia has a criminal justice system based on a hardline and literal format of Sharia law reflecting a particular state-sanctioned interpretation of Islam. It is usually carried out publicly by beheading with a sword. Occasionally, they can be performed by shooting. I found this quite ghoulish, and I did want to include it though. A public beheading will typically take place around 9 a.m. The convicted person is walked into the square and kneels in front of the executioner. The executioner uses a sword known as a sulfan to remove the condemned person's head from his or her body at the neck. After the convicted person is pronounced dead, a police official announces the crimes committed by the beheaded alleged criminal, and the process is complete. The official might announce the same before the actual execution. This is the most common method of execution in Saudi Arabia because it's specifically called for by Sharia law. Professional executioners behead as many as 10 people in a single day. And I saw somewhere, I'm not sure if it was in that article, but I was seeing somewhere where they actually interviewed an executioner, and it's pretty horrendous what they do. I mean, can you imagine having to execute up to 10 people in a day? And that's your job. And they said that, the head comes off with such force, it just rolls away. And it's awful. I don't know what it is about beheading that is just so awful. Like, the very thought of it is awful. I'd rather be put in front of a firing squad or anything rather than that. I'd rather not die at all, but okay, so that is the difference between Saudi Arabia has the death penalty, I guess, and so does the U.S. in for some crimes, but I think the crimes have to be significantly more, whatever they have to be. It has to be, I don't know, like murder or something. Okay, what information might be gained by these detainees? Now, this is interesting too, because I heard that all these people that were being rounded up in under civil law were being detained at a hotel. So I think it's interesting, and I think this could be what Q is pointing out, is that usually people in a situation like that are, disposed of. So why are these detainees being kept at a hotel? And the only reason would be that they are holding information that is useful, either to the Saudis or to us or to somebody. And that would make sense to me. Otherwise, I think that they would have been, immediately executed. Why is this important? And then he says Saudi Arabia, and he has an arrow to the U.S. Now, this is my interpretation, and again, I say this is my interpretation because my interpretation might very well be wrong. But I think he's saying that what's happening in Saudi Arabia is coming to the U.S. That's what I think. Now, if someone has an alternate understanding of this, please, leave a comment. What force is actively deployed in Saudi Arabia? Well, it's the Saudi National Guard. And then he asked, National Guard? So, he really told us the answer, but it is, in fact, the Saudi National Guard. Have faith. These crumbs in time will equate to the biggest drops ever disclosed in our history. Remember, disinformation is real. God bless. Alice in Wonderland. The Great Awakening. Q. And it seems to me, unless my headache has really knocked my brain out, it seems to me that there was a very similar train of questions a little while back. But anyway, we have visited it again, and I wanted to see, because I had something about where those detainees were being kept, but I don't know where I put it. It's kind of interesting though, because they told the guests of the hotel to get out, and then the hotel was filled up with all these people that had been arrested in this big purge in Saudi Arabia. So I really wouldn't want to be those people, but okay. Let's go up to the next one. Lots of interesting things here. This is November 4th again, and it says, follow Huma. Now, okay, somebody somewhere had suggested that this could be the Harvard University Muslim alumni. I don't know, because it's clear from some of the earlier posts that he was talking about Huma, Hillary's sidekick there. So I don't know. I don't know if perhaps he's referring to both, and at one time he's referring to Huma the person, and later he's referring to Huma the organization. But somehow I don't think so, because see, right after Huma, he asks who connects Hillary Rodham Clinton and the Clinton Foundation to Saudi Arabia. Well, I would assume that the answer to that is Huma, but I could not verify that. To me, that's the answer he's wanting to hear, because he's baiting us. He's giving us really the answers. Follow Huma, and then right after Huma, he says who connects HRC and the Clinton Foundation to Saudi Arabia. Why is this relevant? Well, if it was Hillary's sidekick Huma, then it would be very relevant. But I don't know. Again, if anyone knows, please let me know. And then he asks, who is the Muslim Brotherhood? Okay. Now we're going to go out to the internet for this, and forgive my slow computer. Come on, get the hamsters working. Okay. The Muslim Brotherhood has, we'll get it. The Muslim Brotherhood has been in the news lately as one of the reasons behind the current diplomatic crisis between Qatar and other Gulf countries. On June 7th, Saudi Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubeir told reporters during a visit to Paris that Qatar must stop supporting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Jubeir's statement came 2 days after Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain severed diplomatic ties with Qatar in the worst rift to hit the GCC region. Qatar became a central target of the Saudi Emirate Israeli joint lobbying efforts for its perceived role in promoting the Muslim Brotherhood and hosting members of Hamas political bureau. Saudi Arabia and other GCC nations also released a list of alleged terrorists with links to Qatar. The list included the Muslim Brotherhood and its affiliates. And of course, we know that Donald Trump has been trying to get the Muslim Brotherhood branded as a terrorist organization and has not had any luck so far that I know of. At least not until unless it happened extremely recently. I'm not aware that he has had that, had success with that yet. In response to the allegations, the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the classification of the entire Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist is problematic. During his June 14th testimony before the House Committee on Foreign Relations, Tillerson pointed out that There are elements of the Muslim Brotherhood that have become parts of governments. I think you can appreciate the complexities that enters into our relationship with governments in the region, he added. But who is the Muslim Brotherhood, and do they pose a grave risk to regimes in the region? Here is a breakdown of the group's ideology and historic roots. Now, this is very long, and I don't think I want to read it, but I do want to give you a background on this, a little bit at least. The Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest political Islamic group in the Arab world. It is not allowed to operate as an official political party in some Arab countries. When and where was the Muslim Brotherhood founded? The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in Egypt in 1928 by an Islamic scholar and teacher by the name of Hassan al-Banna. He had a vision of a universal Islamic system of rule that could be attained by promoting Islamic laws and morals and by engaging society through offering social services. What are the main principles of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology? The ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood is mainly focused on reform of existing political systems in the Arab world. It embraces the idea of political activism and social responsibility, organizing charitable works and social support programs as part of its outreach to its core support base of lower income populations. The members of the Muslim Brotherhood present a broad spectrum of interpretations of the initial ideology of Hassan al-Banna. Many members embrace a more pragmatic idea of achieving their goals, urging political participation and cooperation. Has their ideology shifted or changed? There were a couple of shifts in the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology over the years as they developed from an active participant in a nationalist movement to a banned group forced to operate underground and leaning towards an armed struggle for their ideology, and then back to a reformist-minded party. Throughout, they have always adhered to their ideal of a society governed by Islamic laws and morals. Who are the leaders? The supreme leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is Mohammed Badi. These Arab names are very difficult to pronounce. I'm not really sure, so forgive me if I'm mangling this poor person's name, but who is currently in prison, having been sentenced to a number of life in prison and death sentences for a variety of charges. Now, this is what we are most concerned about. Is the Muslim Brotherhood a violent organization? In its early days in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood was involved in the active struggle against British occupation and also cooperated with the Free Officers movement to liberate Egypt from the monarchy. A difference of opinion arose between the Free Officers, led by Gamal Abdel Nasser, and the Muslim Brotherhood with Abdel Nasser preferring a secular socialistic country to one ruled by Islam. An assassination attempt against Abdel Nasser in the 1950s led to the jailing of Saeed I don't know how to pronounce that, a leading Muslim Brotherhood figure. His writings from prison advocated armed struggle against the Egyptian regime and others in order to spread the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. And that guy was executed in 1966, but his writings are still used by many Islamic groups to justify armed struggle. So they are and they aren't violent, depending, I guess. You know, they have in times past turned to violence. And have they made political gains? Yes. In late 2011, Tunisia's Ennahda Party, an Islamic party inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood, won the first parliamentary elections to be held in the country after the overthrow of President whatever. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce these guys' name. Anyway, I think that gives us a little bit of a background. This might be important too. In which countries is the Muslim Brotherhood active other than Egypt, which is the birthplace of the Muslim Brotherhood? There are parties that can be considered offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood in a number of Arab countries, as they were inspired by the core tenets of Muslim Brotherhood ideology. These include Hamas in Palestine, the Ennahda Party in Tunisia, and Kuwait's Islamic Constitutional Movement. In Jordan, the Muslim Brotherhood is represented in the Islamic Action Front, the political wing that is one of the largest blocs in the Jordanian parliament. It broke formal ties with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood after the 2013 coup in Egypt. In Bahrain, the political arm of its Muslim Brotherhood group is known as Minbar. Not all Islamic parties are Muslim Brotherhood. A clear example of that is the Salafi movement of Egypt, which was Islamic in nature but chose its own path in various political situations, including the 2013 overthrow of President Mohamed Morsi by the armed forces in Egypt. So I think it's important to know that and these are the countries that have labeled it a terrorist organization. That, I think, is probably important to know as well. To date, the countries that have been labeled, that have labeled the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization are Egypt, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. I would add the United States to that as well, because President Trump is definitely feeling that they are a terrorist organization. So, and why do Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates dislike the Muslim Brotherhood? In 2013, Saudi rulers threw their weight behind Egypt's brutal crackdown on Muslim Brotherhood supporters. In March 2014, the kingdom designated the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group. Analysts have concluded that a brand of Sunni Islamism that called for political participation and electoral legitimacy, of which the Muslim Brotherhood is perhaps the best example, was seen as almost an existential threat because it offered a different model of Islamic politics to that of the Saudi state. So there we have that. And I know that was long, but if we're going to look into this, we might as well look into this and really understand it, because there's so much here, and I just think it's important to understand. So, who has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood? I don't know. I really don't know. I tried to look that up. I tried everything that I could think of to look that up, and I don't know. Now, if any of you have seen anything in the news or anything about this or can add to that, please leave something in the comments below, because I do see that people are reading those comments. I certainly read them. I do delete the ones that have a lot of foul language in them. I leave some of the insulting ones, but the really, really insulting ones with foul language, I delete. There you go. Who is Awan? Now, I had never heard of this, and it's interesting. And I think I bet you this is going to come out more at some point, because it seems like this is a big player. Okay, the Awan Group of Companies is a large and diverse organization with current operations in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Malaysia, United Arab Emirates, and the newest addition, China and the United States of America. Commodities, trading, real estate, food and beverage, general trading, hotels, restaurant and cafes, rice mills, flour mills, textile companies, petrol stations, 30, is that an 8? Looks like 3S. Daewoo, is it Daewoo? I think it is. Dealerships and many other divisions that make up the foundation of the Awan Group of Companies. So you can see they have a lot of, like underneath the umbrella of Awan, there's a lot of companies, and they're operating in a lot of countries. So what is the Awan Group? Well, that is the Awan Group. Where do they have offices? Well, I just read that. Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Malaysia, United Arab Emirates, China, and the United States of America. Why is this relevant? Well, obviously, if Q brought it up, it is relevant, and then he tells us why it's relevant right below. Define cash laundering. Now, of course, I've always heard it called money laundering, and I think I think most of us understand what it is, but I'm going to, just for anybody that may not know, because it's a process that you hear a lot of times, but sometimes people say, well, I don't really understand what they're doing. Money laundering is the process of transforming the profits of crime and corruption into ostensibly legitimate assets. In a number of legal and regulatory systems, however, the term money laundering has become conflated with other forms of financial and business crime and is sometimes used more generally to include the misuse of the financial system involving things such as securities, digital currencies, credit cards, and traditional currency, including terrorism, financing, and evasion of international sanctions. Most anti-money laundering laws openly conflate money laundering, which is concerned with source of funds, with terrorism financing, which is concerned with destination of funds, when regulating the financial system. Some countries define money laundering as that's a difficult word to say, obfuscating sources of money. I'm sorry, I'm mangling things everywhere. Either intentionally or by merely using financial systems or services that do not identify or track sources or destinations. Other countries define money laundering in such a way as to include money from activity that would have been a crime in that country, even if the activity was legal where the actual conduct occurred. Now, what I want to say is that a lot of these foundations, and you'll notice that most of the big names in politics have their own foundation, and that is considered a ideal place to launder money. Very, very easy to launder money. So I think that's why he's asking us, and he's obviously asking about this A1 and this A1 group of companies in respect to money laundering. It's pretty obvious to me because his questions lead to the answers. That's what he always says. And again, I'm saying he, but he or she says. It's obvious. He's saying this A1 group of companies is involved in money laundering. So if they're involved in money laundering, are we through this group of companies that have offices all over, are we giving them weapons? Are they giving us money in return for weapons? I don't know. I don't know exactly what he's saying, but we understand that there's something nefarious going on. What is the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan? Well, it's really quite cozy. It's really quite cozy. And there's another person called A1 too, and his last name was he was a Democratic staffer, and he was arrested. But I don't think that that's who Q is referring to here, because right below he said, what is the A1 group? And I could see no connection between this A1 person and the A1 group. So if anyone knows differently or has additional information on that, please let me know. Okay, so we're going to go out here, and I will to the internet again, and we're just crawling right along there. It's a sad day in the morning, isn't it? Except that it's afternoon. Okay. Saudi-Pakistan ties, strong and getting stronger. I wanted to show you this because it is fairly recently. This was from March 2017. So, the Saudi-Pakistani relationship is a vast and dynamic web of cooperative linkages, age-old bonds of friendship and undertakings, dating from well before the establishment of diplomatic relations and growing continuously year on year. Today, the kingdom and Pakistan maintain close and robust political, military, economic, security, and cultural relations, rarely found in the history of global camaraderie. So I'm not going to go all the way down that. I think that is the most important thing, is to realize that they are very, very close. And, it says rarely found in the history of global camaraderie. So I would imagine, if we were to compare it to something, it would be like the relationship between Canada and the U.S., having lived in both places. I can see the cooperation, and I mean, it's obvious whenever the U.S. goes to war, Canada goes to war. Like, they always send troops wherever the U.S. has troops. So, I mean, there's just a lot of cooperation. There may be some places where the U.S. has troops that Canada doesn't, but the major ones, yes. And there's just a lot of cooperation and a lot of back scratching. And so it's a good relationship between the two countries. And I would assume that that would be a kind of a picture of what's happening with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. So now let's go back here. My mind is still working a little bit slowly because like I said, I had a migraine yesterday and most of today, and when they lift, it's kind of leaves you feeling like a kind of a wet noodle, sort of. So, okay. Why is this relevant? Well, we don't know yet why it's relevant, but I'm pretty sure that Q will lead us to the answer. Why would Saudi Arabia provide tens of millions of dollars to U.S. senior government officials? Well, why would they? Why would the Saudi Arabian government provide tens of millions of dollars to U.S. senior government officials? They're obviously paying for something. That would be my understanding. Wouldn't it be yours? I mean, or do you think it's just out of the goodness of their heart? I don't know. What does Saudi Arabia obtain in exchange for the payment? And of course, now he's getting to the point. Right, that payment is for something. It is in exchange for something. So what? What could it possibly be? What would the U.S. have that Saudi Arabia might want? Well, weapons, of course. Of course. Why is access important? Well, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what he is asking here. Why is access important to who? I'm not really sure who he's referring to here. Why is access important to Saudi Arabia? Why is access important to the U.S.? Because the next thing he asks, the next line down, is what happened when Hillary Rodham Clinton lost the election of 2016? Well, I said, this is me, not Q, and I do try to make that plain, so I don't want to. I said she couldn't repay them because remember the deal on the tarmac that Bill Clinton made, and Hillary Clinton got money from somewhere to run. She did. That's just a fact. She got money from somewhere. So if she got it from the Saudi Arabians, and I think that Q is suggesting that, what would happen if she lost the election? Well, she sure couldn't pay them back in political favors, now could she? And that's probably how it goes. They give her money and then they want political favors in exchange. And so, or else money. They either want it returned in money or favors. It's one or the other, or weapons. But Hillary Clinton is not in any position to bargain with anyone at this point. How much money was provided to the Clinton Foundation by Saudi Arabia during 15-16? I could not find that exact number, like over those years, but it was in the millions. I know that because I couldn't find those 2 years separated, is what I'm saying. But they donated a lot, like big time. So if we're following his train of where he's leading us, he's asking, why would Saudi Arabia provide tens of millions of dollars to U.S. senior government officials? And then he's saying, what do they get in exchange for the payments? Why is access important? I'm not sure. Well, I guess, okay. Now I'm think I'm understanding what he's saying. He's saying, why is access important? Because see, Hillary, if she was elected, she would have access to that money to be able to repay them. I think that's where he's going. Not sure, but that would be my guess. So what happened when she lost the election? She couldn't repay them. How much money was provided to the Clinton Foundation by Saudi Arabia. Okay, sorry. Okay. Loss of access, power, control. Does repayment of funds to Saudi Arabia occur? If so, how? Like, seriously, how would she repay that? Because I don't think anybody was expecting her to lose. So I think Saudi Arabia probably gave her that money in full confidence that she was going to win. She would then have access to pay them back. Now she can't. I'd be a little bit having a cow if I was her. Okay. Why did Barack Obama send billions in cash to Iran? And I think, unless I am completely crazy, I think this was asked already and we went over it. He gave 1.7 billion, but he also sent, I think, 500 million on top of that. I don't have a little, yeah. Let's see this, what this is. Okay. All right. So, I'm not sure exactly why I put that there. This is about the purge. Oh, okay, I see. All right. A number of prominent Saudi Arabian princes, government ministers, and business people were arrested in Saudi Arabia in November 2017 following the creation of the Anti-Corruption Committee led by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS. There are three alternate theories regarding the motives behind the purge: a genuine corruption crackdown, a project to gain money, or preparing to take over the crown. The detainees were confirmed at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in which hosted the announcement for the planned city of Neom on 24th of August 2017, which subsequently stopped accepting new bookings and told guests to leave. Private jets were also grounded to prevent suspects from fleeing the country. The arrests resulted in the final sidelining of the faction of the late King Abdullah and MBS's complete consolidation of control of all three branches of the security forces, making him the most powerful man in Saudi Arabia since his grandfather, the first king, Ibn Saud. And sorry, but this is important. I know that it's long, but come on. Okay. As many as 500 people have been rounded up in the ongoing sweep. Saudi Arabian banks have frozen more than 1,700 domestic accounts as part of the crackdown, according to I wonder if that's going to happen in America. I don't know. Saudi Arabian banks had frozen more than 1,700 domestic accounts as part of the crackdown. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Saudi government is targeting cash and assets worth up to 800 billion. The Saudi authorities claim that amount is composed of assets worth around 300 billion to 400 billion that they can prove was linked to corruption. Attorney General Sheikh Saad al-Matjab said in a statement that the arrests were merely the start of a vital process to root out corruption wherever it exists. He added that those detained will have access to legal counsel and pledges to hold trials in a timely and open manner. Meanwhile, King Salman appointed 26 new judges. Now, I'm not quite sure why I stuck this in here. It's important to know. Like, that is what's happening in Saudi Arabia, and that is what was happening on November 4th when all this was being posted by Q. So it is pertinent. So let's go down. Okay, so we already know that Barack Obama sent billions in cash to Iran, and part of it was under an old agreement, but there was part of it that is being questioned, and I think the big issue is in repaying that money, is part of that money going towards terrorism? And I would just about guarantee that it is. But why was this classified under state secrets? Now, again, I think unless this migraine's really messing with me, I remember these questions because I remember going over the secret, not secretive, what is it? It's not secretive. They have two types of facilities in Washington, D.C. for classified and for unclassified. And if you need special Q clearance to get to the unclassified, well, what Obama did, I'm just trying to put this into my own words, what Obama did was he marked things as classified that really shouldn't have been classified so that nobody could have the big picture of what really went on. So it would take somebody with Q clearance to be able to figure it out. And there's not a lot of those. And so I think that that's what they're saying, because Q is saying, why was this classified under state secrets? Well, it's obvious. It was classified, and it didn't need to be. It was classified to prevent other people from looking at it and other people having access to it, who might be alarmed or, raise concern about it. So it limits the discussion on it because only very, very few people could actually see all the documents. Who has access to state secrets? Well, somebody with Q clearance. Where did the planes carrying the cash depart from and land? Well, again, I think we went over this, and I don't know. I don't know where they departed from. I know that at least one landed in Saudi Arabia, and I know one landed in Geneva. So I don't know anything beyond that. And if anybody else does, please put it in the comments below. But I could swear we went over this. Very odd. But I do see that he does repeat some of the same questions over and over again, and I think that's just for clarification or for emphasis. So anyway, did the planes all land in the same location? Again, I don't know. How many planes carried the cash? I don't know. Why is this relevant? I don't know. What does this have to do with North Korea? I would say that what Q is saying to us, honestly, is that North Korea gained, because remember in 2016, North Korea was a long way from having a missile that could, reach across, intercontinental, I guess they call that. And now all of a sudden they claim that they do. So I think that the inference here is, where did they get that from? And, that's what I think. That's what I think he's leading us to. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and I'll probably be wrong again. But that's what I think. What does this have to do with Saudi Arabia, Clinton Foundation cash donations? Well, I would say that it's quite likely that the Clinton Foundation supplied Saudi Arabia with weapons or uranium or whatever they needed, and in exchange for cash, quote, donations. That's what I would assume based on what Q is saying here. What does this have to do with ISIS? Well, again, see, it's funny that now that the Democrats are out of office, that all of a sudden ISIS has been just about defeated. I mean, really just about defeated. That was quick. That was really quick. So was there some sort of a pipeline between the Clinton Foundation and providing these countries with guns and uranium and whatever they needed, whatever they had need of? I don't know. But somebody was supplying ISIS. And we know that ISIS was a U.S. creation. It was created. And I know that a lot of people, when I say that here, they think that I am completely insane. But when you research it enough, it's pretty obvious to me It served their purpose. And what does this have to do with slush funds? Well, obviously it does have something to do with slush funds, or Q wouldn't even bring it up. And why is Saudi Arabia so vitally important? Well, it's important, one, for the oil, two, because they're our ally in the Middle East, at least traditionally they have been, and beyond that, I'm not sure. I know they have a very cozy relationship, but you know something that's interesting, and I just want to throw this in here, and this is a rabbit trail, so I'm just warning you. Here's a rabbit trail coming. But I was doing something, I don't know, I was researching something on the relations between Canada and the United States, and I found out, and nobody believes me, none of my American friends believe me, but it's true that Canada supplies more oil to the U.S. than Saudi Arabia does. How do you like that? So that's just, I'll just throw that in for free. Anyway, so then he says, follow the money. Who has the money? What is happening in Saudi Arabia today? Well, what was happening is that big purge that I just read about. That was what was happening. All these mass arrests, people being detained, their planes grounded, and they're being detained. I mean, at least they were. I don't know if they're still there, but they were in that hotel. And I would imagine the reason why they weren't immediately killed is because they're trying to get information. So now, again, I could be wrong, but that seems to me to be common sense. Okay, why is this relevant? Well, it's obviously tied. This is obvious. Saudi Arabia is obviously tied to what's happening in the U.S. Like, there's no question in my mind about that, because not just because of everything that Q is saying, although that's, a big major clue, it just seems obvious to me. And so I think as time goes on, we'll see it clearer. But right now we're kind of just grasping in the dark and exploring these clues that have been given out. Why is this relevant? Well, he's going to tell us why it's relevant at some point. I don't know, except beyond the fact that they are related. The two situations are related. Who was Abdullah bin Abdulaziz? I can't pronounce his last name, but he was the former king, who is no longer king. What events transpired directly thereafter? Well, I read that to you, that they were, their planes were grounded, they weren't allowed to leave the country, and they are being held at this hotel. How was POTUS greeted compared to other former U.S. presidents when in Saudi Arabia? Well, he was treated to the red carpet, for one thing, and a sword dance. Now, no other U.S. president has been greeted that way. And it seemed very friendly. I did watch, it's on YouTube if you want to watch it, the welcoming ceremony and the sword dance and all that is on YouTube. And it's very interesting. So, because it's evident to me that there was a warm relationship there, that there was some sort of, and also apparently they did not like Barack Obama at all. So he was kind of snubbed when he went there. What is the meaning of this tradition? Well, actually, I've seen that it means a couple things. The traditional men's sword dance is known as the Arda, according to the Saudi embassy in the United States. The performance combines dance, drumming, and chanting, poetry, and it signifies the start of noble occasions, like religious holidays or weddings, according to the United Nations. So it's the start of a noble occasion. But it's also, I saw somewhere else, where it was the prelude to war. So not sure what he's alluding to there. I'm hoping that he's not alluding to this being a prelude to war. I don't think so. I think he meant the first one, that it was, the prelude to a notable occasion, that they, considered him honorable. They honored him. They, remember Barack Obama bowed to the king. Okay. what is the meaning of this tradition? I just went over that. What, coincidentally, was the last tweet sent out by POTUS? Now, where did I put that? I think it's right here. This is very interesting. The last tweet that he sent out, because I went back to this day and I looked at the timestamps and everything, would have been, would very much appreciate Saudi Arabia doing their IPO, which is initial public offering of Aramco with the New York Stock Exchange, important to the United States. Now, this company, Aramco, it's huge, like huge, and they are thinking of offering an initial public offering. And there's 2 countries that it may happen to. And see, Trump was sending a message right here. He was in China at this time, and he was sending a message to Saudi Arabia saying, we'd really appreciate it if you would offer this on the New York Stock Exchange, because it would be, a huge boom for the States. But the other country that wants it is China. So he was in China, and he tweeted this to Saudi Arabia. So I think that was kind of a little jab at Saudi Arabia that, hey, remember us. Why is this relevant? Well, I just described to you why it was relevant. Why was that an instruction of some kind? Absolutely. To who? To the king of Saudi Arabia. Why is this relevant? Well, I don't know. It's relevant. Where was POTUS when that tweet was sent out? China. Why is that relevant? Because China wants to buy Aramco. They want the initial public offering. What attack took place in Saudi Arabia as operations were undertaken? Well, interestingly enough, Yemeni rebels on Saturday targeted an airport in Saudi Arabia's capital with a ballistic missile, according to Yemen's Houthi-controlled defense ministry. But the missile was intercepted over northeast Riyadh, the Saudi Minister of Defense said in a statement carried on government-backed their names are very hard to pronounce. Anyway, the state-run TV there. So yeah, they intercepted a missile. So just as the operations in Saudi Arabia were happening, they get targeted by a Yemeni rebels missile, and it was shot down. And he said flying objects, that was his clue, and then I put in here ballistic missile. And I spelled missile wrong, just to give people a reason to give me nasty comments. So there you go. That was free. What U.S. operators are currently in Saudi Arabia? I don't know. I did try to get that information, but I don't see where it's available. So he could be asking these questions of people far higher up the food chain than we are. And because I don't know how we would ever know what U.S. operators were in the U.S. or in Saudi Arabia. That information is not public. So, and they would be putting those operators in harm's way if it was made public. So I just don't think that there's an answer to that. Why is this relevant? I don't know. Questions provide answers. Alice and Wonderland. So that is the end of that major post. And let's see what the next one is, because it's getting okay, the next one, I don't want to do too many more here. I'm going to stop and then see if I can do another one tonight. What did I write here about Julie? Let me see here. There's something critical in there. I wouldn't have put it. Come on, hamsters, wake up. Okay. Yeah, this is why. ISIS and Clinton Foundation are both funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And this is by Julia Assange. However you pronounce his last name, I've heard it different ways. Wealthy officials from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, who donated money to Hillary Clinton's charitable foundation, also provided financial support to ISIS, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has claimed. In an extended interview at the Ecuadorian embassy in London with documentary maker John Pilger for RT, Mr. Assange said the same Saudi and Qatari officials could be seen to be supporting both the Clinton Foundation, founded by Mrs. Clinton's husband, Bill, and funding the activities of ISIS. Oh, surprise, surprise. I can't imagine that would ever happen. Could you? No. Mr. Pilger asked if Mr. Assange believed that this notorious jihadist group called ISIL or ISIS is created largely with money from people who are giving money to the Clinton Foundation. Yes, Mr. Assange replied. The WikiLeaks founder pointed to an email exchange between presidential hopeful Ms. Clinton and her campaign manager, John Podesta, leaked by his organization last month, which he believes is the most significant email in the whole collection. In the email sent on August 17, 2014, Ms. Clinton asked Mr. Podesta, who at that time worked under President Barack Obama, to help put, quote, pressure on Qatar and Saudi Arabia regarding the country's alleged support for the terrorist group ISIS. Now we know how Donald Trump has managed to get rid of ISIS so fast. We need to use our diplomatic and more traditional intelligence assets to bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are providing clandestine financial and logistic support to ISIL and other radical Sunni groups in the region, Ms. Clinton wrote. Mr. Assange noted the U.S. government had never acknowledged governments of Middle East nations had financially supported ISIS, instead arguing such support was isolated to, quote, some rogue princes using their cut of the oil money to do whatever they like, although the government disapproves, according to the WikiLeaks founder. So this is really interesting because it just explains so much of what has gone before in these little tidbits of information that Q is throwing out. It really does. That's who was funding the terrorism. According to the Clinton Foundation, the Saudi Arabian government has donated between $10 million and $25 million since the foundation was set up in 1997. Last month, it was reported that the government of Qatar offered to donate $1 million to the foundation in celebration of Bill Clinton's birthday. Happy birthday, Bill. Here's $1 million. Representatives from the Clinton Foundation have repeatedly denied accusations. Ms. Clinton has solicited funds and used donations to boost her campaign. So there we go. We've got proof of that. There were no donations from Saudi Arabia while she was acting as Secretary of State between 2009 and 2013. Mr. Assange, who also used the interview to dismiss the prospect of Donald Trump victory in the next week's elections, which the polls show will be closed, also used to dismiss the prospect. Well, he was wrong. He was wrong about that. So he says, my analysis is that Trump will not be permitted to win. Why do I say that? Because he has had every establishment against him. Trump does not have one establishment, maybe with the exception of the evangelicals, if you can call that an establishment. Banks, intelligence, arms companies, foreign money, etc. are all united behind Hillary Clinton, and the media as well. Media owners and the journalists themselves. And we know that. We know that they were all behind Hillary, and it's very obvious. In October, Ecuador's government confirmed it had temporarily restricted Mr. Assange's internet access at its London embassy to prevent him, quote, meddling in the election process in the U.S. So my computer's slow, but I think it was worth going to that. Now, oops, sorry. Let's go on to this. Q says, very smart, Anon. Disinformation is real. Distractions are necessary. Saudi Arabia is the primary. U.S. is the secondary. Asia/EU, I would say, he's saying, is the third. Now, what he means by that, I don't know. Alice in Wonderland. Q. So, I'm going to leave it there for now. I may upload another one tonight. I'm not sure. See, look at this. This is actually a lot of the same questions that we were asked just in this post down here. And this one comes at 8:22, which is like, an hour. Yeah, I don't know why he's doing that. But I am going to check mine against the official ones that we know have come from Q, just to be sure, because I don't want to be giving you any erroneous information. So I'm going to call it quits for tonight. Again, Jeffrey, thank you for the coffee. I appreciated it. Anyone else wants to buy me a coffee? I really need caffeine. So I will talk to you soon, and thank you so much for listening. Have a good night.